This morning I thought we would take a little bit of time and discuss some of the books I have on blacksmithing and some that I think are a must-have book for any blacksmith's library. I have a lot that are optional, just enjoy them, but there are a few that I really think everybody should have. Real quick before we get into that, this is my little office. It's in the basement of the house right next to the wood shop. That's where I do most of my video editing. I have a drawing board that I rarely use, but every now and then. And that's really about it. And one of these days I'll get the door put up on it and the dust from the wood shop won't get in here quite so bad. These aren't all books on blacksmithing. There are books on woodworking, books on building construction, and a few novels in here. But most of them are how-to related, and most of them are blacksmithing books. I picked out some that I think are of particular interest, and I'll talk about these, mention a few others, and then I'll give my recommendations. If you only have one or two books to buy as a new blacksmith, I'll tell you which ones I think you probably ought to have. These are some of my favorites. Some of them are older, some of them more just interesting, some inspirational, and some highly instructional. This book, The Art of Blacksmithing by Beeler, isn't a particularly new book, and it may not be real applicable all the time, but it has some great stuff. Right here there's an article on how to forge weld a steel face onto a hammer. That could be really useful. We'll do that one of these days. But there's just all sorts of good information in here, things that a lot of authors don't address these days. There's a little bit of stuff on armor, some decorative hardware work in here, candle holders, just all sorts of great stuff. There's a fireplace crane description. So I think this is a pretty good book. It might be a little harder read than some of the newer books, but huge amounts of information. Another book that might be kind of a hard read is the Blacksmith's Cookbook by Francis Whitaker. This is out of print. The Whitaker Foundation were the last people I knew that had these. In fact, they were probably the only ones that ever printed it. But it has so much good information. Even though Francis was not much of an author, he was an outstanding blacksmith, and if you can put up with the kind of odd layout of this book, there is a wealth of information in it for a very small book. I managed to get 2 copies of it. This one I don't take to the shop. It's in very good condition. Here's how Francis calculates and forms collars, a bit on scroll bending. Even has a section on how to bend angle iron, which is really quite complicated. But if you ever need to make a curved angle iron piece, the information is there. Various forge welds. Even has how to do the forge weld to make a bracket for a post vise. It features some of the projects that he had done over the years. Like I say, it's not necessarily the best laid out book, and it can kind of jump around and be a little bit confusing, but the information is in here. This is a chart on slitting chisel lengths. That's an outstanding chart if you're doing slit and drift work. And in the back there are notes from other blacksmiths who are taking classes with Francis on some of the things that he was teaching. And in some ways these are often better than the chapters that Francis wrote himself. But in any case, I think this is an outstanding book to have in your library. Good reference material. It may or may not be the easiest thing to read, and isn't really full of how-to projects. If that's what you're looking for, this may not have it. But you can see my other copy has seen better days. because it does go to the shop from time to time. Early American wrought iron. This one's probably kind of hard to find. I don't think it's still in print. This was a 3-volume set. This is a reprint or a second edition probably. It's all 3 volumes in one set. But this is all historical work. It doesn't tell you how to make any of it. It just shows you what it was. And this is the real deal from real buildings in the U.S. Hinges. So you have to figure out how to do it, but you've got the patterns of what was actually being used. So if you're looking to do historical recreations, this has got the information in it. Weather vanes. Let me see if I can move the camera in better so you can get a little better view. Sorry about the shadows. The lighting in the office is not really meant for video work. Boot scrapers? That'd be a good project for us to do one of these days. So there's just lots of things to inspire your imagination in some of these books. But you have to figure out how to do it. It's not obvious sometimes, and you're going to have to think on it. Boy, if we did everything in that book, we'd have video subjects for the next 20 years. Now this is a publication. This was the traditional metalsmith. He only did a few years worth of it, George Dixon. But it's some outstanding stuff based on his experience in the Samuel Yellen shop. There's some work on how to create roses out of a single piece of bar stock. Some hinge details. Various tooling. Historical tooling right from Yellen's shop that he talks about how to make. And he even has some patterns for some things at the back of each one of these. Just outstanding information, very detailed. This is not the kind of work that you do if you're trying to make stuff fast and furious to take to the craft fair. This is very, very detailed work, very precise. And if you follow any of his instructions, you are going to really up your game as a blacksmith. And this has one of my favorite quotes in blacksmithing. And we will discuss that in more depth and make an entire video. Blacksmithing is not defined by time period or motif. Blacksmithing is defined by process alone. I think that is an important statement. But I have all that he ever made, and you may be able to find reprints. In fact, you may be able to still buy these copies. Last time I looked, they were still available online. There just weren't any new ones. If you join your local blacksmithing group, they might put out a publication. This is the one that the Rocky Mountain Smiths does. And it has some very good how-to articles and a lot of things about what people are up to. You know, there's announcements for workshops and things like that. So it's not all project related. But there's also this is where you're going to find in your local area some stuff, classified ads, who's got stuff for sale. I'm going to save that book just for a minute. Then there are various books, and I'm not even going to try to cover all of these. I've got dozens and dozens of books from European smiths. This is written in German, I believe, and is really just to inspire you. It is not how-to. It's just showing work from smiths that are so much better than I am, and shows how far I still have to go in the craft. Some excellent ideas. And with any luck, we'll at some point get into some things vaguely similar, but we'll be learning those together because it's things that I don't currently do. Now, books that I think you should have. If you could only have one book, this is the one. This is The New Edge of the Anvil by Jack Andrews. And even an older copy, there we can get some shadows out of there, would be worth having, the original Edge of the Anvil. This has things about shop setup. He actually recommends a teepee, which I don't know if I'd go that far or not. Talks about various styles of forge construction, hammers, tooling, basic processes, basic technique. Has some projects in here, but what makes this book so invaluable are back in the appendices, if I can find just the right stuff. See, it would have been smart for me to bookmark some of this. But he has things like weights and measures for various sizes of material, so you can figure out how much you need to make something that weighs a certain amount, how much material you need. There's some information on torches, on found tool steels. There is probably one of the better basic sections on heat treating in this book and how metallurgy works. There's a wealth of information in the back of the book here. And if you buy this book for no other reason, I think these chapters, this section in the back of the book is well worth it. But it's probably one of the best basic books out there. And he even highlights some other smiths. Shows some wonderful work to inspire you. So you kind of get the best of all the books in one book here. So if you could only own one, this is the one I'd buy first. Here's his chapter on heat treating, talks about metallurgy and face-centered cubits versus body-centered cubits and what iron does when you harden and temper it. And this will explain it better than I ever could. The other book that I would probably recommend, and this is a fairly expensive book, is by Mark Asprey. And it's the Mastering of Fundamental Skills for the Blacksmith. Mark is an outstanding teacher. If you can ever watch him demonstrate at a workshop or a conference, you really should go out of your way to do so. But great photos, great instruction, very detail-oriented on how to do all these things. And I think that is an outstanding book. So those would be the first two books I would buy if you're new to blacksmithing. And this is the style of punches and chisels that I like are the ones that Mark talks about here in this book. So you get better information there. So here are a few other books that I just pulled out to show you some more of what's available. The Beauty in the Shadows is all about the Washington National Cathedral and all of the ironwork that's in there. So that would be a great place to just go tour if you ever get the chance. The Mastermere Find is about a Viking Age tool chest. Professional Smithing by Donald Streeter has some excellent information on how to improve your efficiency if you're doing production work. Decorative Antique Ironwork is just another book full of highly inspiring images. It'll let you know what can be done in blacksmithing, things that we never think of if you don't put yourself out there and start looking at other people's work. So if you're looking for something to do on a cold winter's day, sit down with a good book that'll inspire you, whether it has how-to information, technical information, or if it's just looking at some of the work the great masters have done in years past to inspire you to do better work when you get back into the shop. Books are a great resource. I probably have over 100 books on blacksmithing, and I am sure I'm not done collecting them. If you don't have money for books, think about joining your local blacksmithing organization. Dues might be $30 or $40 a year, but for the Rocky Mountain Smiths anyways, we have a lending library. You pretty much just pay postage to get it to you and back. I think there might be a little nominal fee, but for $4 or $5 you're going to be able to read many different books. All the books I have will probably exist in that library, and they probably have twice as many books as what I've got. So the books are there, and if you can't find one yourself, you might be able to get it from your local organization. May have a library similar to what Rocky Mountain Smiths has. And of course you can join Rocky Mountain Smiths. This isn't necessarily a plug for them, but if you're in any part of the country and you join, you would have the rights to check out books from the library. So go out, search out some books, whether you borrow them, get them from your local public library or your local blacksmithing group's library, or buy books, whatever it takes. It's a good way to further your blacksmithing education. It's a good supplement to watching videos on YouTube, but all of that is still no substitute for getting out to the shop. So head out to the shop, light a fire, get some work done, enjoy yourself, stretch your imagination, challenge your abilities, but have fun and stay safe. Talk to you later.